This is the world's tallest folly. Or is it? Well, there's actually a hidden feature inside this 280-foot tower that might mean it's not a folly at all. In fact, there are many mysteries surrounding this place, and today we're here not just to admire it from a distance, but we've been invited to head inside and climb the 369 steps all the way to the top. It's a long, possibly dark ascent, but don't worry, I've got plenty of myths, legends, and good old Victorian drama to share with you along the way. So let's go and check it out. Now, we are currently in Halifax in West Yorkshire, and we're about to climb up Wainhouse Tower, which actually goes by a number of names: Octagon Tower, Wainhouse's Folly, and even, the most dramatic of all, the Tower of Spite. And some of these names give us a bit of a clue as to what kind of stories might be surrounding this place. But first up, how about that big one, the world's tallest folly? Well, is it a folly? I'm not here to dispute its record because, I mean, it's amazing and very impressive. But some people think, well, maybe it's not. And the reason is all to do with this hidden feature. Because constructed on the inside of this tower was a fully functional chimney, which ties into its original intended purpose. Because it was meant to connect to one of the local factories, but ultimately the chimney feature was abandoned and it was never used. And curiously, nobody seems to know exactly why. We know a lot of things about Wainhouse Tower, but not that. This was built in the late 1800s, which was a time when smoke pollution was a prevalent problem, heavily policed and fines were being dished out. So to build this tower so high up on the hilltops here and at such a height itself makes a lot of sense. But exactly why the feature itself was abandoned, we're just not sure. The chances are though, if you look this place up online and you look into its history, you'll find a different story, which gives a whole nother explanation to the chimney feature and the name, the Tower of Spite. And that's where the Victorian drama comes into play. Before we get to that though, how about the height itself? In fact, before we head up, let's just have a look around the base of the tower, because the height itself is something you'll find different figures for. And one of the reasons for that is to do with the way it was constructed. Now, the tower was built with no foundations and straight into the bedrock here, which means depending on which side you measure it from, you're going to get a different number. And you can already see just from the side here how much that number might vary, because the entrance is just on the other side of that brick wall, and then the bottom side is right down here. I'm not actually too sure what this is. I read an awful lot of text, historical texts, preparing for this video, but that, I don't know. One thing we can say with confidence though is that the tower is around 280 feet tall. It's pretty massive, in other words. And it really stands out in the area, not just for its height, but for its ornate balcony and stonework as well. Bear in mind, this is a region that's littered with chimneys from the industrial past here. So for a similar structure to be so unique and so memorable, well, it says a lot. Now, I'm not too sure how long the climb is going to take. I'm curious to see, but let's go and find out, and I can tell you about the more dramatic stories surrounding this place. Here we go. This might take a few minutes. Let's see. Now, the man responsible for this tower is called Edward Wainhouse. A pretty prolific local figure in the community, very active local businessman, and he also owned a local dye works. And it's this connection that prompted to the idea for building the chimney. Not too high yet. At least we got some rest spots if we need some. And I did just ask one of the volunteers, that archway we saw at the bottom seems obvious now, but was where the chimney would have been plugged in. I don't think that's a technical term, but you know what I mean. Now the drama though, and the Tower of Spite. Well, this is where another character enters the scene, Sir Henry Edwards. Now Henry was another sort of prolific local figure. He was born into a wealthy family and later inherited all of this wealth. At one point, he was a member of Parliament for Halifax, which is the area we're in right now. He was at one stage the High Sheriff of Yorkshire, which curiously is a position, oh, we can see the cemetery there, a position that still exists today in 2026. And he was also Grand Master of the West Yorkshire Freemasons. In other words, wealthy, well-connected and powerful, I think it's fair to say. I do like that there are so many places to look out on the way up. I can't wait to see this view. And, well, this is the chimney. These days it's been bricked up, so it couldn't function anymore, but it could have worked at one point in time, had it been completed. Now, the most common story you'll find about the tower online is connected to these two men, Henry and Wainhouse. And it's said that they had a very public feud, which is true, and that as an act of revenge, Henry was known as a man who valued his privacy. And so Wainhouse decided to construct the tower so that he could see in to Henry's estate. And that's where the name the Tower of Spite comes from. And as much as I do agree with the phrase, don't let the truth get in the way of a good story, I do have a bit of a duty on this channel to let you know what I know. And well, it turns out that this just couldn't really be true. The timings don't add up. Because we know from surviving records that Henry and Wainhouse were actually good acquaintances, maybe even friends. They spoke highly of each other. Hey, little picnic spot for a little seat maybe. And it is true, they did eventually have a very dramatic falling out, which I'll get to in a moment. But when the chimney and the tower were well into construction, they were still on good terms. So it just doesn't seem possible that that could be the reason behind the tower being built. Maybe it was just a happy accident, because by the time it was completed, they were no longer friends. And something else that throws a bit of a spanner into this story is the cost of the tower. And this is again one of a few details that we just don't know for certain. There are various figures that have been thrown around, from £4,000 to £10,000, even £14,000. And if we take the middle of those estimates, I guess, £10,000, and we bring it forward into today's monetary value, I'm getting a bit out of breath here, really trying to pace myself. But in 2026, that would be just over £1.1 million. So, a very expensive way to get back at somebody. So it just doesn't quite add up, in other words. Not quite sure how well the camera picks up these little grills, but hopefully you can start to get a feel of how high up we're getting. As I mentioned though, the feud was very much real, and it was very dramatic, a very public falling out. There were a number of things that happened to ruin, I suppose, Henry and Wainhouse's friendship. And one of the main ones, we got some decorative stones here, we must be getting high. One of the main reasons was that Wainhouse was, among other things, responsible for maintaining the local wells. And on two separate occasions, I have a little rest here, two separate occasions, Henry was discovered to have been taking advantage of this local network of wells. In one instance, one well started flowing yellow colour, and upon inspection there were sacks found in there that were branded with his business. On another occasion, it was discovered that Henry was diverting unnecessary amounts of water into his own estate from a well and limiting what flowed on to the rest of the public. And he was eventually caught. Wainhouse discovered this, and there were several other incidents that happened that led to this huge public feud. In fact, one of the other men, a third man, who was sent to investigate this wrongdoing, dug up some of what turned out to be Henry's land. And Henry's response was to bankrupt this man. He genuinely bankrupted him, and all of his belongings had to be auctioned off. So if you have any historic belongings and you live in Halifax and they bear the name or the initials of John Collinge, well, there might be a story there. Oh, the breeze is nice, it's coming through. Now, things got so bad between the two that this feud was very public and made its way into the papers, courtesy of Wainhouse. He did not hold back when it came to his accusations and sharing his strong beliefs about Henry's character. I think we might be nearly there. And eventually, not much of a window, eventually he was no longer allowed to do this, and he published his own pamphlets. In other words, they didn't keep this to themselves, and everybody knew about it. From the sounds of it, it really divided the local community. And this was a falling out that they never resolved. They both passed away in the late 1800s and remained enemies, I suppose. Wow. What a view. Been very lucky with the weather today as well. Let's have a little wander around. Now once again, I don't want to be that guy, but there is one other, let's call it a myth, surrounding this place that you might hear about if you look Wainhouse Tower up online. And it's that on a clear day, you can see from here all the way to Blackpool Tower, which, where are we? Would be, I might be wrong, I'm thinking that way. I'll have to check on the satellite imagery in the edit. But the truth is, due to the topography of the land in between the two landmarks, it just wouldn't be possible. Nevertheless though, the views are amazing. We've got all the housing estates on the right hand side. We're very nearby to the town centre of Halifax. And then all this amazing nature on the other. Now there is a lot more to this story here as well. A lot of things happened, and to be honest with you, I think it'd make a fantastic BBC or Netflix drama series if it hasn't been done already. And we've got one of the perfect filming locations right here. And the good news, if you're watching this and you're interested, you want to see this place for yourself, is that you can come to visit. This is not a sponsored video, but I do want to give a massive thank you to Calderdale Council, in particular Steve and all the volunteers here at the tower. They run open days here fairly regularly outside of winter, and they're open the first Friday, third Saturday of every month, and bank holidays too. So if you're ever nearby in the area or passing through, then I can easily recommend it. Not only is the tower here, but we're very close, of course, to the town centre of Halifax, where there's loads of stuff to explore, the very well-known Peace Hall, and tons of amazing countryside nearby as well. Thank you so much for watching, supporting the channel. We've got tons of exciting stuff on the way, and fingers crossed, I'll see you on the next one.